Welcome to the Fourth Step Podcast. On each episode, we interview recovering addicts and learn their story with addiction. Through exploring personal journeys, we get a glimpse of the depths addicts fall to and their path in recovery. We hope you enjoy the episode. Welcome to the Fourth Step Podcast. My name is Kevin. I'm an addict, and with me is my co-host,
Josh, addict.
Hi, Josh.
Hello.
And today we have
Ryann, addict.
Hi, Ryann.
Hey.
How are you?
Doing great.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So
On
are
a scale
you...
from 1 to 10, she's a 9.8 right now, she said.
Oh, yeah?
Absolutely correct.
9.8.
Yeah,
She
9.8.
answered quickly, too.
Yeah.
So when you say 9.8, you said there's a lot of shit going on around you, but you personally, you're doing really good.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like that. You know what that means? That means that she's calm in the storm, in the eye of the storm.
Yeah.
That's grace.
That is what it feels like.
It's grace.
Just kind of watching it all happen and doing what I can in the moment and
Yeah.
not tripping out too bad.
All
Pretty
right.
conscious choice. It's like a decision you have to make to practice that.
For
me,
sure.
For me, yeah.
Acceptance and surrender is a conscious choice I have to make. It does not come naturally.
My cousin said the other day, something that really hit for me is that she said, in this life, happiness is fleeting, but contentment is attainable, and she accepts that. I was like, that's pretty good. Started thinking about it more, and I was like, what principles can I practice to get to contentment and surrender, acceptance, gratitude? Like and it can happen pretty quick if I consciously do it, because I'm not content much. Like I don't find contentment very often.
Yeah.
I have to slow down and like get into those principles of surrender, acceptance, and gratitude, and then I can like.
Well, so contentment, would you say that would be like
everything is okay right now?
you're good with what you have?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Peace of mind.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, so you know what this podcast is about?
Yeah, I do now.
You do now.
Yeah.
So you blindly said, yeah, I'll do a podcast, and then
Sure.
showed up here and we go, well, it's on the Fourth Step.
Well, I heard I got to hang out with you guys. So yeah.
Oh,
I was down.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, your husband's sat in on one of these sessions too. And
Just one?
yeah.
We did an episode with him, and then he was also
No,
a guest.
he was a guest host.
Yeah.
He didn't we didn't do an episode with him?
No.
All right.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to ask you questions about your childhood, growing up, all that stuff.
Oh, okay. Great.
And we kind of just want to be able to you to share the mess, but not like, you don't have to go on these, like strange tangent stories,
Right.
but like the impactful stuff that changed your life growing up.
Yeah.
And one of the first things we ever ask is like, did you ever have trauma growing up?
Oh, sure.
Like, what did that look like?
Farthest back you can remember.
Well, trauma for me started, my parents were very neglectful. They were in their disease. So that's kind of, if I had to trace my trauma all the way back, it would just be the loneliness.
Growing up with...
Yeah, I had a younger brother. I was the oldest of two, and we were just on our own all the time. And so I sort of picked up these skills of caretaking, people pleasing, codependency, all out of fear that I was going to be abandoned or left behind.
It's like a slow drip of trauma.
Yeah, yeah.
How far back, like what age do you remember, like are you able to consciously remember like that process beginning?
My first real memory was, and I have no idea what age I was, but I was in a playpen. I remember looking over the edge of it. My parents were doing lines off of this picture that used to hang behind our couch of my grandparents. They used to take it down, do lines off of it, and then wipe it off and hang it back up. And that's just one of my earliest memories. I know my brother...
Do you know what they were doing?
Coke. Yeah. I mean, that's what they did together.
Okay.
When my mom left, which was when I was 6, my dad moved to meth, which was more affordable. He's on single income now, so he had to make choices.
The more affordable
He
drug.
was being prudent. So
yeah. Practicing that spiritual principle.
But yeah, I mean, at the time I didn't know what it was. I just knew, they put me in the playpen so that I could get to it.
You would say that would be like neglect or abandonment.
For sure, yeah. I mean, emotional, but also physical. You know, they were always locked in their room or in the garage. It really started when I was 6 and my mom left because she didn't take us with her.
So so this was your mom and dad, and then when you were 6, they split up?
Yeah, my mom left to like get clean, but to me, all that meant is she was gone and she didn't take us with her. She left us with him and my dad, who at least stayed. It's funny because the more step work I did, the more I realized my resentment for my mom was a lot stronger than my dad.
Wow.
Because my dad stayed. You know, he never left.
And your mom left?
Yeah.
So that was a heavy abandonment issue.
For sure. Yeah, the fear of abandonment like pretty much drove every decision I made up until I got clean. Yeah.
I can relate to that.
Yeah.
I still struggle with it.
Anything to keep people from leaving me, whatever they needed, I was, just tell me and I'll do it.
So that plays into your heavy codependency then.
For sure.
It's pretty trippy to like feel like I've got a grip on like how I deal with that trauma and the effects that it has on me. And then another layer shows up where I'm like, whoa.
Yeah.
Like something else will just pop up like, wow, dude, I was terrified of this pattern repeating itself and I didn't even recognize it. Like it'll just be some sort of little small thing that clicks and I'll be like, oh man, I'm scared.
Yeah.
I'm scared right now. It's a trip how long the effects of that kind of stuff can last.
Fear and inadequacy are at the core of everything for me.
Well, we got questions about that too.
Okay.
But abandonment, so that's like your first early trauma that you remember. Any trauma after that played a part in your decisions about getting loaded?
Sure. I mean, my family of origin, the neglect was really what it was about. My dad, when my mom left, my dad brought my uncle in. There was a lot of physical abuse from him because he didn't know. He was also using. He didn't know how to deal with his anger. But he kept that from my dad, and so I kept it from my dad.
Wow.
So it was a lot of like, taking the brunt of it for my brother who was younger. I have like a savior complex with him. And so there was some physical abuse, sexual abuse in high school that, again, like, no one really was safe for me to divulge the information to. And so it all just sort of internalized.
Yeah, we run across that a lot where kids don't have a safe space to turn to. And so a lot, many of us turn to drugs.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a common theme.
It's funny because I didn't get loaded till in my 20s. I was so determined not to be like my parents.
Oh, really?
That like my disease really manifested in a lot of different ways. People pleasing, codependency, stealing was like one of my very first like adrenaline rushes. But yeah, I didn't actually put in until I was out of college. So I was determined to like go get an education and not be my parents. But, of course, my disease didn't care about that.
Jeez. Yeah, I get that. So there's a follow-up question. You answered some of it. What effects did it have on your relationships with others? And you mentioned codependency.
For sure. All of like my friendships were very surface level. I was the outgoing, a lot of image management I've realized in my relationships where I don't present my authentic self because I'm afraid that people won't like it and they'll leave me.
Yeah.
So
You still struggle with that today?
Oh, sure. For sure. Like my initial response is to like play a part. When I meet someone new, I want to be like the funniest, the most thoughtful. I want to like be like indispensable to people is really what it is. And so my relationships were also always very surface level. I thought if I knew more people, then I'd be safe. And so I would want to be everybody's best friend, but nobody was mine, if that makes sense.
That's interesting.
So my relationships were very
I never got that from you.
Do you catch
right.
it?
Well, you met me after I'd done a lot of work.
I felt that you were always authentic.
Yeah. Oh, in recovery even, I struggled with image management. I went on a whole like year-long journey of self-discovery and authenticity where I like really risked a lot of relationships in order to become my authentic self. And I had to let go of people that, found out who I really was.
That's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. What were you going to ask?
Do you recognize it when it shows up?
Image management?
Yeah, like if you're struggling with it, is it something where you're like, does it hit you? Like, do you catch it in the act or hindsight or both? A little bit of both?
A little bit of both. I've done a lot of work on who I really am. I try to present that up front, but every once in a while I'll still catch myself like embellishing a story to be funnier or to sound better than I am. And I'll have to be like, you know what, that was a lie. I'll have to catch myself in the moment and be like, you know what, I didn't really do that. Or, oh, it wasn't really like that. Or I'll be like, oh yeah, I ran track and I did a 4-minute mile. I never did a 4-minute mile in my entire life, but like I want to tell people I did,
Yeah.
So stuff like that, little lies like that still pop up.
Just to fit in.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can relate to that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, I was way better than Al Capone with my criminal activity enterprise, my empire, which consisted of selling small bags out of a walk-in closet at a motel room. With a sawed-off
motel
short
room
tent.
with a walk-in closet.
Yeah,
That's fancy.
Yeah,
I struggle. I don't necessarily struggle with it. Like I've got a little bit of acceptance around it, but then also like acknowledge the fact that like I could probably do better. Hindsight, I will make real life scenarios funnier than they were by shifting or tweaking things slightly or adding emphasis onto certain points that like, and that's for a humor factor. But then what's my motive for making it funnier is to make myself appear like to be more valuable. Like you were talking about, like, and so like I've been looking at that a little bit lately. Cause I will be like, it didn't really happen exactly like that. Why did I feel the need to, and it doesn't really matter. It wouldn't most people, it wouldn't matter. You know what I mean? It doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
But if I'm taking an honest look at like what my motives are behind that, truth is like, I just want to be funnier.
Yeah.
And
little embellishments where I'm an expert in it. Just enough to tweak it.
Sure.
For sure. I think too, like the more I know myself, the harder it is to lie. Like it was easy to lie when I didn't really know the truth, but I couldn't really be authentic in anything until I figured out who I was.
So the abuse, physical, sexual abandonment, all that played a part in making the decision to get loaded to cover up those feelings?
I mean, if I'm being honest, no. I used like praise, recognition, acknowledgement in college. Like schoolwork became my escape. And it wasn't until I was out of college and I started dating a guy who was getting loaded that I really gave myself permission to like stop being this overachiever. I had like gotten this resentment about responsibility. And I was tired of being this, like, always studying, always working, always doing the next right thing. Like, I wanted to let loose. And this guy I was dating, like, offered me drugs once. And I just decided to say yes.
What did he offer you?
Yeah, well, that's the next question. What was your first time loaded and what'd you use?
I mean, I was blackout drunk a lot after college. I just went wild and I was drinking a lot. This guy offered me a line of meth and I did it. Like, didn't even...
Were you drunk when you did it?
No.
Okay, tight. Right on.
No. It's yeah. I got.
So that was your first drug. Well, actually, alcohol.
Yeah, I used to just drink till whatever. Like I always wanted to drink like the guys, quote unquote. So I would drink more than I could. I'd throw up and then I'd go drink more just because I wanted to be one of them. I wanted to be able to drink like they did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's very common, like
sure.
Alcohol's first and then there's
but after that, like I went straight to
whatever.
To meth. Yeah. There was no question about it either. There was no like, should I do this? Like, oh, that's right. I didn't want to be like my parents. No, I just did it. I was like, oh my gosh, he's sharing his drugs with me. Like, I don't even have to pay for it. He must really love me.
Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah. Did you ever have abusive relationships?
That one was, yeah.
Were you able to consciously identify the effects that the meth was having on you when you did it originally? Like, were you like being a little bit older, you'd be like, oh, this is cool. I don't give a fuck about anything.
For sure. I felt it as soon as it hit me. And I always say, even in like my chairs, that I never tried to manage my using. I was like, I'm going to do this every day.
Yeah.
Because the feeling it gave me was like that warm wash, that like very like I didn't give a fuck about what anybody thought about me anymore. Like I wasn't trying to be anything. I was just like chill and content.
You didn't have to work on fitting in.
Yeah. And I never slept, so I could be way more productive. I'm like, I should have been doing this all through college.
You could drink more?
Yeah. I didn't actually. I stopped drinking when I was getting loaded because it would bring me down. And so I wanted, like, once I started doing meth, that's all I did.
Same.
Yeah, I didn't mix. I didn't do anything else. It was uppers or nothing. Like I just was like, I don't want to pay to take a nap. So I That was
Yeah.
the abusive. So I did have a long string of very controlling relationships, but the first physically abusive relationship I was in was that one.
So looking back, do you see like maybe you were attracted to that type of abuse? Did any of your childhood play into that?
The control?
Yeah.
For sure. I mean, I thrived in people telling me what to be and who to be. And so controlling men seemed to find codependent women, right? Or vice versa. The controlling likes the codependent because we thrive in that sort of, tell me what to do and I'm happy to appease you. And admittedly enough, like I really only left those relationships because I absolutely had to. It was never like my choice. I never made that choice for myself. It was always them that did it. Yeah.
Is that sounds a lot like, when women get physically abused and I'm not going to leave him. He loves me.
For sure.
That type of situation.
Yeah. Well, and I was like, I'm going to be the one that stays, like I was so afraid of being abandoned that I didn't want to be the one who abandoned either. Whoa. So it was like this like personal, like I was going to get some like trophy for like sticking it out.
That's an extra layer to the denial for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So looking back now, what would you say to like other women that stick around in those situations?
I mean, I was doing the best I could, and I'd like to think that eventually if it had gotten bad enough, I would have left. But I mean, I think everyone should like spend time. I was a serial monogamist. I was always in a relationship. I never took time
alone
to figure out who I was by myself. If I could say anything to anybody, is like spend a year by yourself. Like,
isn't that what they tell us when you get in the program?
Sure.
Don't get in a relationship in the first year.
Yeah. And I did. I stayed single for a year and a half.
Did you really?
Yeah. And I stayed single for like almost 2 years. And then I dated a guy with 90 days. And I'm like, well, together we both have a year. The justification, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I still hadn't gone on any of my self-reflective journeys yet. All I had was step work, which was great in the beginning. It gave me just enough clarity to want to do things differently, but I still didn't have the tools yet.
Yeah. So during your using, like after college and all that stuff, what type of situations did you find yourself in that were like?
When I was getting loaded? Lots of bad ones.
Any life-threatening?
Sure.
You had graduated. Did you graduate college?
Yeah, I graduated college. And
Where did you graduate college? Where from and with what?
I graduated with my bachelor's from UC Davis in neurobiology.
Neurobiology.
What were you going to do with it? What was your
plan?
So
ideally, I was going to be pre-nurse. I wanted to be a surgical nurse. That's what my plan was, which, of course, then I got loaded instead. So that put I was like, I'm going to take a year off after my bachelor's because I had been in high school. I went straight into junior college, which I paid for all myself because that's just what my situation was. So I did junior college first, and then I made enough to put myself through my bachelor's program. And then after that, I was burnt. I mean, Davis is no joke. It's the quarter system. So instead of 16-week semesters, it's 10-week quarters. And I worked my ass off. I graduated, but I was done by the end. So I'm like, I'm going to take a year off. And in that year, I managed to find myself loaded and school was no longer an option.
Wow. But you did graduate.
I did graduate, yeah.
Yeah. And when you say school is no longer an option, it was just simply because now you're getting loaded and fuck that? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I had no desire to go back.
It would get in the way.
Right. Well, and I'm like, I got my bachelor's. It's fine.
Yeah. You ever, do you have like criminal charges that would prevent you from pursuing that nowadays? Is that something you thought about doing?
I do have criminal charges, although I ended up in recovery being able to get my record expunged. Nice. So I did I always thought, I'm never going to get my record cleared. Right. That was I thought, that way too. Yeah. So my sponsor just said, why don't you just do the application and see? And I did. So I did the application. I went through probation. I had to like prove that I had like completed my sentence. I had paid all my restitution. I had to go be seen in front of a judge. Narcotics Anonymous wrote me letters of character reference and letters of recommendation. And the judge read all 66 of them in court. And
out loud?
Wait, 66 what?
Letters.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
I did that for my contractor's license. I had like fucking
Yeah.
stacked.
Yeah, Narcotics Anonymous just shows up
Yeah.
when you need it. And so, yeah, and my judge's name actually was Judge Savage, which I thought was awesome.
He was a savage.
And yeah, he like thanked me, and I was the first to be seen. Colin was in court with me, and he read them, and he just basically said, like, this is what we hope. When we put people through the system and they get out and they say they're going to change, this is what we want to see.
Yep.
And so we ended up reducing all my felonies to misdemeanors and then dismissing them all. So
That's
my record
amazing.
is clean, yeah.
Yeah. So next question. Did you have fears of some kind that affect you in your early getting loaded, and then follow up if that affects your relationships today? Like, what were those fears like?
Well, being alone.
Yeah,
Can you
fear of
repeat that-
abandonment.
Can you repeat that question for me? Sorry, Kevin.
Yeah. Did fear of some kind affect the way you interact in relationships?
Fear today or
in
then?
early recovery or
Both.
early getting loaded?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, sure.
Like
I
what-
mean, fear's everywhere for me. I feel, that there's always a little twinge of fear. But when I first started getting loaded, of course, I said yes to getting loaded because I didn't want him to like think any less of me. I wanted to be included in what he was doing, that need to be a part of, that feeling of, if I don't do this, I won't be accepted, I won't be loved, and he'll leave me. Absolutely. My relationships with my family were completely contingent on his allowing me to be around them, which was not. And so I didn't have any relationships with almost anybody else. So my circle became very small when I was getting loaded. I only hung around people who were doing what I did. And then I would get my drugs and I would go home and use it. And so my relationships were very transactional and minimal.
What was your tweak? What did you do when you got loaded? What was your thing you like?
Oh, anything and everything. I'd alphabetize the movies. I had like a very extensive battery collection. I would clean the baseboards. I was a big cleaner. I was like,
Batteries?
battery. Oh yeah. Every type of battery you could imagine. And I had them like in a tackle box. They were all separated by size.
Okay, I have never heard that one before.
Yeah, that's an interesting one.
Yeah.
Yeah, batteries.
Yeah. I don't know why. It's like I started doing things like, and I'd need a flashlight or a headlight and I'd never have the right size battery. And I just started collecting them. Yeah. Or I'd be like, oh, I'm going to fix this pocket watch, but I don't have the battery for it.
Dude,
so I just like
that's a
started.
super tweak.
Yeah.
Yeah, your headlamp.
Oh yeah.
Make sure your headlamp.
The other thing was I
ready.
would love to go around to like Goodwills and find these like old like china or like some sort of antique. And I would like tweak on looking it up on like Antiques Roadshow or some kind of antique book. And then I would like catalog it and I'd bubble wrap it. And I'd like it.
Super tweak.
Oh yeah. I still can't buy bubble wrap or shrink wrap without being like, oh,
Thinking about you
I
getting loaded.
can't wear a headlamp.
Your episodes?
Nope.
Really?
Oh yeah, it's like a thing. I couldn't go in a Goodwill changing room for a long time. I can't even go into Goodwill, honestly. It's just
Because of all that?
yeah. It's just I spent all my time either getting loaded in the casino or in Goodwill. It's
That's pretty funny. Goodwills. Yeah. An inversion. So that's getting loaded. Do you carry over some of that stuff, that fear in today?
Sure. Yeah. It took me a long time, even in recovery, to really be my authentic self. I had this fear that I wasn't going to be enough or that people weren't going to like me or they were going to ask me to leave. When I got here, my dad had 8 years clean. And so he knew.
Wait, your dad had 8 years clean?
Yeah. So my mom got clean when I was 6. So she's been clean a long time. And she's now a huge member in Al-Anon. And then my dad got clean when I was 20. So he had 8 years when I got clean. And he took me to my first meeting. And I thought for sure he was going to like walk me into a room full of all his friends who had been hearing about all the stuff that I'd been doing, all the ways that I made him worry, and that they were going to like have this preconceived notion about who I was. And so even walking into this first meeting, of course, I was like desperate. I wanted to get clean. I didn't know how. I wanted to be accepted, but I still put on this front of like, I don't need you. Please don't touch me. Don't hug me. Like I'm better than this, because I was so afraid that if I gave myself over fully to the program, it was going to reject me. And of course, my first meeting was not anything like that. I walked in and people were glad that I was there. They hugged me. My dad didn't even sit by me.
What was the first meeting?
First meeting I walked into was Monday night in Roseville at the church that they have the Tuesday night at now. It was a 7:00 meeting. I had 3 days clean.
Dopeless Hope Fiends.
Well, yeah, but this meeting was called
same location.
Yeah, this one was called, I don't remember what it was called, but it was the Monday night in Roseville. And that church used to have a Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday night. And so my dad walked me into that Monday night. We went back to Tuesday night. There was a Wednesday in Roseville, and then Thursday, and then Friday night was my first meeting, like actually standing up and saying that I was an addict.
What meeting was that?
Friday Night Alternative.
Okay, so the Loomis meeting.
Yeah.
Barton?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I had walked into that meeting. It was the first night that they had it in that Loomis location. It used to be at the Kaiser in Roseville.
No way.
Yeah,
really?
so we actually walked up to the Kaiser in Roseville, and somebody was handing out flyers saying that they had moved.
Wow.
So
All right. So back to that fear about today. I pulled you off that track. So you're talking about what fear carries over in today's relationship that you grew up.
I mean, today, I think I'll always have this fear of not being good enough. But the more work I do on like accepting myself, the more I know that how other people feel about me really doesn't have anything to do with me.
Mm-hmm.
And like my identity, my value, my worth is not defined on what other people see. For me, like my relationships are much more authentic. I'm more vulnerable. I'm willing to be more honest in them. And so the relationships I do have in my life are a lot more meaningful. And so even though my worth isn't based on them, I get a lot more reciprocation and love from them because.
Yeah. So you recognize like your relationships that are heart to heart.
Mm-hmm.
They're like the base of our humanity. Or
Yeah.
I'm not sure how to explain that, but like you and I just being authentic with each other.
Yeah.
There's no pretenses. There's no character defects involved in that. No judgment whatsoever. Do you still seek that out today?
Seek what out?
When you have that fear of like abandonment or being enough, do you still seek that out, or you're content with where you're at?
I'm pretty content where I'm at.
Yeah.
Like where I'm at today, like I know no matter what, I'm going to be okay. Like life might not look the way that I want. And so my fear today lies in my expectations not being met, I guess, or my life not looking like the way I want.
That's a good pivot.
Yeah, but there's been so many instances where I had an idea of what life was going to look like and the universe showed up and said, nah, it's going to go in this direction. And it always ends up better.
I can relate to that a lot. I like I want to touch on the power of authenticity in a relationship, like, cause not everybody can practice that, what you're just describing. However, by practicing that with somebody that cannot, you create the opportunity for them to be able to do it by example. And then when two people are doing that together in a relationship, the level of connection it can be so great. It can be fucking unreal. And then, the next thing was seeking the validation and or judgment. And then the expectations thing you just touched on is like I get panicky sometimes, and I will want somebody else to make me feel better because I can't figure out how to make myself feel better. And so I'll start trying to call people, and I can then like, hey, I'm fucking struggling. I don't know what's going on. But the reality is that everything is fine. And I get scared that because I can't figure out what's going on, that I'm going to lose those relationships. So I need to reach out to people to know they're still there. Like just to find that connection, the validation, just to feel safe, you know?
Yeah.
It's usually and to roll back to the expectation, it's usually because life isn't going how I want it to go. I'm like, things aren't fucking working. Something must be wrong. I've done something wrong. I don't have any friends. Like I can spin.
So what do I tell you when you do that?
2-foot drop.
Attaboy.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. I mean, I think too, fear is an acceptable response in some situations. You know, it drives us to like work on ourselves, be better,
huge motivator.
to keep those connections. But Like one thing I've learned about feelings is that whatever I'm feeling, it's totally okay.
Yeah.
Like I don't need to
and
escape.
It's temporary.
Yeah, I don't need to escape or change my feelings. Sometimes the best thing I can do for myself is just sit still.
Yeah, and that's not always easy. Actually, matter of fact, a lot of times it's extremely difficult. Like that feeling of like I just need to sit in this, like is one of the hardest things I deal with on a regular basis. Like just to be okay with it, and sometimes I can't. I'm like I can't handle this. I'm gonna lose it. My mental state is in jeopardy because I'm unable to maintain the focus and surrender required to get through this. I'm going to fucking lose. I'm going to snap. Something's going to break. I'm not okay.
That's when I get the phone call.
Yeah. Yeah. Right before the break.
Yeah. And then after the phone call, it's usually like, hey, I feel a lot better.
Yeah. Of course.
Yeah. Because it was just a simple, simple phrase that just changes the perspective.
It's cool. Usually it's a combination, like, because through practice, we learn how to apply principles and certain processes that will create some relief for us. And sometimes I just for me, sometimes I just need to hear somebody say, let that go. But there might be layers. So I need to go through an entire process with somebody where it's like, oh, you can let that go, surrender here, embrace that. That doesn't have to change. And then over here, you don't have to do anything. Like by the time the conversation is done, I've practiced all these things individually before, and I know that I'll gain some kind of relief from it. And then so by the end of the conversation, I've heard, maybe 3 to 10 different little key phrases where I'm like, oh, and lately what I've been doing is like in that process is that I will verbally acknowledge like that one hit, that made me feel a little bit better. And then I'll go to the next part of the process and like, oh, that hits. And I get just a little bit of relief from each different layer of, solution that we can find. And it's fucking gets me through it sometimes.
Yeah. My sponsor's really big on being like God dependent, higher power dependent. And that's been really transformative for me too, because when I can't get a hold of somebody or when I forget to pick up the phone, like I always got the universe with me. And sometimes I'm not always in an acceptance, but I'm almost always in faith. And so sometimes that's the way that I combat fear.
Cool.
Is just by it, even if I can't accept it right now, I can have faith.
So that's great. I mean, we talked about like all the fears and everything, but what you just said is a good segue into your spirituality or higher power, whatever you believe in.
Yeah. What is that, and how did you find it?
Yeah, we could talk about it on this podcast. What's your gig?
I mean, I'm a big.
Did it change over time?
For sure. So I was raised agnostic. So there's something out there, but we don't know what to call it, is sort of the belief I came into Narcotics Anonymous with. And for the longest time, because I like to put these expectations on myself and my process, I thought I had to have a higher power. I had to know exactly what it looked like. I had to know what its voice sounded like. I had to like have this picture in my mind. And so the second step was really tough for me for a long time because I couldn't envision my higher power, like the physicality of it.
And you felt you had to.
And I felt I had to, not by any other direction other than myself.
Okay,
like that
so
was
nobody
that was
said.
something I put. Nope, that was something I put on myself. Like, oh, I can't possibly believe in it if I can't see it.
Mm-hmm.
Now my higher power is I call it the universe, energy, the flow of any. It could be a gust of wind, it could be a leaf, it could be a gum wrapper, anything. Like I personally believe my higher power is in every atom.
Would you characterize that as agnostic still?
Sure.
I mean, something.
By definition, that's pretty much the same. Yeah.
Yeah, it could be anything.
Yeah, my first sponsor had me read The Good Red Road, which is
I don't know what that one is.
It's based in like Native American beliefs that like the earth and the elements and the seasons and like all the energy, that it's transferable, that it's constantly in change, and that it can take any form. And so I took that like even a step further and said like it could be this couch. It doesn't have to necessarily even be organic or in nature. It can be anything I'm around. I believe my higher power is in people. So like when you talked about like hearing those things that hit and don't hit, I believe anything I need to hear, my higher power is going to make sure I hear it. And so that's sort of what I believe. I also believe my higher power can take any form. So it can be him, it can be her, it can be anything. So when I hear other people talk about their higher power or God or Jesus, anything like that, it doesn't, to me, it's just another form of my higher power, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
I just don't want to put into a box like something that is so vast.
So what's cool, what you just said is
so
like,
similar to that.
Yeah, in my early recovery, a guy shared at a meeting about perspective of a higher power. And he talked about this mountain being in the middle of the room and everybody's around it and we all see something different.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool. I like that.
Yeah. Like I'm looking at my side of the mountains has got like dirt bike trails and rocks and dirt. And I'm like thinking like, that's amazing. And then you see on your side of the mountain, you see like pine trees in the forest and a stream, beautiful stream coming down. And Josh sees something else. Rock faces and a moose walking across the top of it.
Moose.
Right? So we're all seeing all these different perceptions, but it's the same mountain.
Yeah.
And in our 12-step programs, that same mountain is our own perception of our higher power.
Yeah.
I heard that from that guy and I was like, oh, I'm on board.
Yeah, I love that. Sometimes because
it's safe.
Yeah. Well, and it's
the analogy
flexible.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's universal.
The more time I'm clean, the more gray area there is in my life. Less black and white, and a lot more gray.
Yeah,
and that flexibility is like so freeing.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. I experienced a shift in that for me in gaining a better understanding of humility and unconditional love because it created so much space. It created all this space for things to look and me have no control over things and like to be able to like roll with the punches better and like just be okay with whatever reality is. And like there's so much, it's freeing, Yeah.
Yeah. We don't have to get stuck on other people's
or our own.
Yeah. I think to answer your question too, like for me in the beginning, it took several sets of steps for me to really give myself permission to open my mind. I like to think I'm an open-minded person, but when it comes to me and like my internal process, I'm very rigid. I have these perfectionism tendencies that I want to do it quote unquote right. The second step is still the only step I've ever been told I had to redo.
Really?
Because, my second step, I answered my questions all based on what I thought my sponsor wanted to hear. Because I was so uncomfortable saying that I didn't know that I made something up, right? There's those little embellishments again, and that lies that I want to be accepted. And she heard me out and she's like, wow, that sounds beautiful. Now do it again and do it right. Like do it your way. Do it from your heart.
Oh, I like that.
And in that moment too is when I really started, in the back of my mind, I started thinking, oh, like maybe even clean, I still have these tendencies to
Sounds like that sponsor was very perceptive.
She was wonderful.
Yeah.
I picked her specifically because she seemed so spiritual. She was always barefoot, always wearing tie-dye. She was like at one with nature. And I just wanted that. I wanted somebody that felt connected to the world around them.
So, we'll get back to sponsors. Your spirituality basically looks like your universe around you.
For sure.
Yeah.
Every little thing.
And it's kind of all encompassing.
Yeah.
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 Which I think that whole conversation is very vital for us to keep and we don't do it at group level, obviously, right? So we keep with traditions, but like we have very good friends that are diehard follow Jesus Christ, and I say very good friends and I mean it, like whatever their path is in their spirituality is none of our businesses and it doesn't hurt us.
Right.
And a lot of times on the outside of our circles, people have these opinions, which I tend not to listen to, that it has to be this one way. And that's not what, and they're members of 12-step groups.
Sure.
And
think about how many people we would not be able to reach as a fellowship.
Oh man.
It was just, it only could look one way. Yeah.
So true. Yeah. So I just wanted to throw that out there that I really appreciate your perspective and it makes it okay for anybody else listening that we get to have whatever we want.
Yeah.
And we are, what would you say? Like, we are not required to, but we are encouraged to not judge on somebody else's belief.
Yeah. I had to learn that I could be right without making somebody else wrong.
Yeah.
Like, it can all exist. And when someone has a different view from me, I'm not scared of that anymore. I want to learn more. Like, tell me about it.
Yeah.
And all it does is give me more information so that, like, because my spirituality is always changing. The more information I get about myself and the world and others, it all helps shape my relationship with my higher power.
Yeah.
And so if I truly have faith that the universe is
the thing that stands out the most for like the evolution of my higher power and the relationship I have with it is experiencing my higher power in my life, like seeing oh shit, like the intervention, like seeing the way that it interacts with me on a personal level. And it's usually hindsight,
you connected the dots.
Yeah. I'm like, oh man, like, or sometimes I'll like be in it and be like, whoa, I need to chill out, or like I need to, like, this is not supposed to be happening right now, or very guided in a specific direction. Like I can feel like the push from my higher power, and that has shifted. The more available that I am for that process, the more that I see, the more that my relationship develops, and that faith can deepen. It's
everything
it
teaches.
Picks up momentum. Yeah.
Yeah. Everything teaches us. Sometimes it teaches us what we want, and sometimes it teaches us what we don't.
Yeah.
But need.
Yeah. Or it's like, okay, I'm going to take what I want and leave the rest.
I do that. And that's where my spirituality is.
Yeah. And
it's tough sometimes.
Huh?
It's tough sometimes.
Yeah. But you mentioned the 2-foot drop, and that's what gets me centered in my
unconditional love,
my spirituality. It's just that I live in my heart. Right?
Yeah, I don't think there's anything really that's not supposed to happen. Like everything everything happens the way it's supposed to happen. Like whether or not it's comfortable is one thing, but everything happens for a reason, and sometimes again, it's to show us what we want or need, or sometimes it's like, okay, well now I know not to go down that path.
Yeah. So our next question, I love that part that we talk about spirituality and get a different perspective.
I love hearing about people's.
Yeah. I mean, Josh and I have had the conversation quite a few times. My path went from hating God when I got here, because look what he did, to not believing in a specific God, which I still don't today. I believe the energy, absolutely. I connect with nature a lot. When I'm out in the back of the ranch, out in those trees and just sitting there and listening, I hear and feel my higher power. Yeah. Right. So nature's big. And then my aunt, who's a Buddhist, and she's in a 12-step program many, many years ago. It got me interested. Like, what's attractive about that she likes? And I respect my aunt tremendously, Aunt Holly. And so I like kind of seen some similarities in their spiritual path, and they practice a lot of spiritual principles in that path. So like I go, oh, I like that. I like that. I like that. And so I did get to pick a lot of stuff out. And so that's freeing, very freeing for a lot of us.
Yeah, I think I went from feeling insignificant, right, which makes sense since that's my fear, is that I'm going to be insignificant, to my higher power, to like now I have a relationship with a higher power where I do feel seen and important. So it's funny because like there's people that come in hating God, and which I find almost like would have been easier, because then at least I would have had like a God to hate.
Yeah, or direction.
But I felt so insignificant to the world around me that I just didn't believe in anything. Yeah. And so now to have a higher power that I feel like seen and acknowledged, and
well, it's great that it can
significant
change.
Too. Yeah.
That it can change. Like I found a higher power through Christianity, and then like over time have developed into like, it's just this thing. I don't know what it is, but I know it's there. And like, whatever it is, like I believe in that. And like, and struggling with organized religion.
Yeah.
Like having a difficult, like we went to a Catholic memorial service. Was it last week?
Yeah.
Like within the last week. And I was uncomfortable in there. Like I was
Me
there,
too.
I was present, and I like participated, and I felt the energy of the people in the room, but trying to connect with my higher power in the way that the people in the room was not okay with my spirit. Like it didn't hit for me. Like it didn't work, It made me uncomfortable.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
But the key thing I believe is that we sat through it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Showed up.
That's what we were there for, to show up.
Yeah, absolutely.
We weren't going there to participate.
Oh, yeah.
in the ceremony.
Yeah, my feelings about my discomfort for that process were irrelevant at that time.
Exactly.
Well, yeah, I've gone to, I can very much relate. But then I just remember service, and it teaches me to just respect the group conscience and okay, well, if I'm at the Catholic memorial and the group conscience is it's Catholic, then I guess I'll just keep my opinions to myself and just stick it out. Yeah.
Yeah. And just keep remembering the reason we're there.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what made me, that's what got me through it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So here's a next question. What consequences from our past wrongdoings are you living with today? I find that, that word wrongdoings is funny. What shit did you go through that you still live with today? Most people have like a health thing.
I've done my jail time, paid my restitution.
What were you arrested for?
I was arrested for commercial burglary and identity theft.
What did you steal?
All kinds of shit. Anything and everything.
That's a good enough answer.
Tell us a story? Oh, God. I don't know. I would literally just walk into stores with this giant bag, and I had I thought because I looked like the girl next door that nobody was going to pay attention to me when I just literally took stuff off the shelf and put it into my purse. And they didn't until they did.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I had all these like charges looming over me.
So how did you get commercial burglary?
I was going to ask that too.
Did you break into a place when it was closed?
Nope. It's because I stole over like a certain amount from a commercial building. Yeah.
Really?
What did you steal that gave you that charge?
I used to do a lot of stuff. It depends. I used to steal. I had this like come up that if you stole from Lowe's or Home Depot and then returned it without a receipt, if it was less than $149, they would give you cash.
Really?
So that's what I would do is I would go in, I'd get a small, like usually like a battery, because you know how I love batteries. But like a car battery? Like 3 or 4 of them that were like $40 each. Yeah, power tool battery. Yeah, they were like $30-$40 each. I'd get like 3 or 4 of them, put them in this giant bag. I'd return them. Oh, I got the wrong size. Oh, this is a different brand. Like I'd play the girl card. Like I don't know tools. And I would get my cash, and I would do that once a day.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a hustle.
And so...
Did you drive around all different ones?
Yep. I drove around. I had like wigs. This is like an ongoing joke with me and like wigs? My sponsees. Oh. I'd have different purses, different outfits, different wigs, and I'd walk in and I'd walk out, and then I'd always return at the new store. So I'd like drive to a new one. I'd return. I'd go change my wig, and then I'd go in and like steal from that one, and then we drive to the next one and return. So it was like this whole like loop we would do.
Wow.
Yeah, and so anyway, eventually I got caught because I didn't
do that
because no moderation. And eventually I had like all these
driving around in
so
circles.
I'm still not allowed in the Auburn Home Depot. I'm not allowed in there. Lifetime ban. But yeah, these stores started catching on. Like when we'd burn out like one store, we'd start hitting like the sports stores. So it was like we just learned the return policies, and that was our come up. And then we'd go to the casino and we'd get our dope and we'd play some games, and then we'd do it all over again the next day.
So remind me not to show you where my battery drawer is.
Oh, I'd have fun in there. Are you kidding?
Keep my batteries.
I Are they organized?
She'd probably just organize it. Yeah.
Yeah. I'd have like little like trays in there. Oh yeah, I'd love that.
That's hilarious.
I'd love that shit.
Alphabetized and fucking coordinated and
any like health consequences?
No, I managed to get out of my disease without any major health consequences. I did end up pregnant.
Did you use needles?
No.
Never?
No.
Nice.
That's a line. That's
Snorting,
a yet for me.
Smoking.
Yeah, snorting, smoking. I had friends that started getting loaded, that started using IV, and I saw it once happen in front of me, and it was enough to scare me to not want to do it. Yeah. But, everything's a yet. Everything's a yet. But yeah, no, I didn't do it.
You don't have to do that.
Yeah, no, I don't.
I wish that happened for me. I saw it and I was like, I would like to do that. I want to do that. Will you do that to me?
I also thought I had this superiority complex too. Like, oh, I'm not. And we all have those things. Yeah. Oh, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
But again, I know there's a lot of lines I said I wouldn't cross that I crossed. And so it's only a matter of time if I decide to get loaded.
I've talked about that before. Actual drug addicts are guys that shot heroin in the doorways in San Francisco.
Yeah.
That's a drug addict.
Yeah, that's a drug addict.
So I'm never going to shoot heroin in a doorway in San Francisco.
Yeah. Yeah, so I did come out of my disease pregnant. So I guess that's a health.
Did you use while you were pregnant?
No, actually, I found out I was pregnant when I had 30 days clean.
Oh, you're kidding?
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
So I got clean. My clean date's January 1st, 2012. And it's funny because our house got raided, and I was the only one. I had been sleeping for 3 days. So when they tested everybody in the house, I was the only one with a clean test. And so they drove me from Lake of the Pines.
Were you on probation?
No, but they started, they had video of us robbing these stores, and then they started following us.
Why did they test you?
Because they found drugs in the house, and I said I'm clean. And so they said they didn't believe me, take this test, and they tested me.
Huh.
They did test everybody else in the house because they also tried to say they were clean, but they weren't. I'd been sleeping for 3 days, and I honestly was shocked my test came back clean because I was like, well, if I'm a real drug addict, that's just going to be in my system for like a week, right? But it was clean.
But
and
you said you had 30 days clean when they raided?
Yeah, so no. I was sleeping for 3 days when the house got raided. Now
they were following you from robbing stores?
Yeah, into Lake of the Pines. And Lake of the Pines was working with them because they're like a very like tight community. I grew up
in there.
Yeah, so they Lake of the Pines was more than happy to get us out of there. And so
where were you staying in the Lake of the Pines, do you know?
So my daughter's dad's parents lived there, and we were crashing at their place.
Where at in the lake are you?
Dude, do you really need to know?
I'm just curious. I was just in there the other day.
I think that's too much information.
Yeah, it's I can tell you the street name, Greenbrier.
Greenbrier, yeah, tight, right on.
No, you don't need that.
Yeah.
That street name's not going to hurt nothing.
Redacted.
I don't
know. But yeah, so when they raided the house, they took me to my parents' house, and basically my parents, who had all but written me off, said you can stay here as long as you go to a meeting every day and you get a sponsor.
Awesome.
And so that was on.
When you
that
say
was
your
on
parents,
Sunday.
what parents?
My mom and my stepdad.
Your mom and your stepdad, and your mom's was clean for how many years?
22 by then.
22, and then your stepdad?
Longer than that, 25.
He's got that
at that time.
Yeah, Russ has like 38 years now.
Yeah.
So 26.
Jeez.
Because I have 12 years.
So that's kind of cool though that you got to get clean in an environment that was clean.
Yeah.
Not everybody does. Some people try to get clean.
Well, and that's the only reason is I basically said the only people I know are getting loaded.
Yeah.
And so they said you can, and anyway, so I started going, that was on a Sunday. I went to the Monday night meeting the next day.
Yeah.
My dad who had 8 years. And then at about 30 days, I found out I was pregnant purely because I just couldn't stop puking. My mom's like, maybe take a test. And I'm like, no, I'm on birth control, which I didn't realize that if you don't take birth control at the same time every day, this is a PSA for any ladies listening. If you don't take birth control at the same time every day, it becomes like 50% less effective.
Really?
Yes.
Like most medication?
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, is that?
Yes.
Really? Oh.
On a lot of medication.
I'm learning so much.
Yeah, you have to take it at the same time.
So I got pregnant. I found out, and thank God for that. Thank God I got pregnant.
That's pretty cool.
Because Abby really saved me from, like, when I went and started like showing up to court for some of the stuff I'd been arrested for.
Yeah.
The judge gave me a sentence that allowed me to be out in time to have my daughter. So I didn't have to have her in jail.
So, I'm very grateful that happened for you.
Yeah.
Me too. So
what about you use with her too?
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, super lucky.
Resentments.
Oh God.
What resentment did you carry for a very long time that you have overcome today?
My mom.
So you carried that in childhood?
Yes. Yeah, when she left, I don't think I recognized it as a resentment at first. When she came back into my life years later, She took me out of the house with my dad, and by then I was the like surrogate mom to my brother.
Yeah.
And I was like the caretaker that I didn't trust her. I used to watch when she was at the store. I'd watch and see if she was going to put alcohol in the basket. I was very reluctant to open back up to my mom. I didn't trust her.
When your mom got you, was your dad still getting loaded?
Yeah.
Okay, so she took you out of a bad environment.
Yeah, it took her 2 years to really get to a place where she could take me and my brother back.
Wow.
So I was 8, and for years, I could not let that go. That fear that she was going to leave again, the anger that she left in the first place, and just that sense of injustice.
Were you a daddy's girl?
For sure.
So you didn't want to leave your dad?
No.
Even though he was getting loaded, though?
Even though he was getting loaded. Well, and as a kid, all I knew was that he was the one that stayed, and when he became our sole caretaker, he started to show up more. He started to, he was devastated when my mom left. So I think too, again, with the, I don't want to be the abandoner. Yeah. When my mom took us, I knew that was going to just devastate him. And I wanted to stay. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So I really resented my mom for a long time. And it wasn't until years clean that I even acknowledged that that's what it was, that it was a resentment. Because by then I had fooled myself enough into thinking I had forgiven her. But the fact is I hadn't really forgiven her. I had more just stopped relying on her for any sort of emotional anything. And so our relationship, again, was very superficial.
Did you get close at all with her?
Oh, now I'm very close with her. Yeah. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. Once I acknowledged I had a resentment, then I got to do some work on it. And then I got to tell her about it when,
How'd she take it?
She took it okay.
When you say you did some work on it, what does that look like? Can you break that down?
I mean, I had to sift through the story in my mind, which was that she had left us and that when she came back, it was to take us from my dad. And so that was the story I had in my head. Not that she was keeping us safe, not that she was doing what she needed to do for her so that she could then do what she needed for us. I think becoming a mom helped me to understand more where she was coming from, like her motives, and that helped me to forgive. So I don't know. I worked a lot on where that anger came from, because anger was also a feeling I didn't allow myself to feel.
But you don't, it's not reoccurring today though.
No, in fact, I just dropped a 5th step, and so she was not on my 4th step.
Wow. So that's done.
Did you do a lot of writing in the original process of getting through that?
Yeah. So I will say my first couple 4 steps, while they were thorough and to the best of my ability, and she was on them, there was still a lot of the onion that I hadn't peeled back. I hadn't realized how much her leaving and abandoning us that I turned inward and made about like how important I was in the family and what she must have felt about me. I didn't realize how much I internalized that. And so I worked around a feeling steps, and that was when I really discovered just how deep that went. How much of like how I felt about myself was tied up in that initial abandonment.
I struggle to find the willingness to participate in what my family dynamic looks like today based off of abandonment and trust issues and all that stuff. Like work around it to like get to a place of acceptance around it. Like I can like have feelings come up around like some of the stuff that caused me to feel a certain way or trauma or whatever. And then I can get into acceptance around it pretty quickly and like surrender it. Mm-hmm. But I still like, I don't have.
It still triggers feelings.
My willingness to participate in family stuff. Like I feel like maybe the rest of them do. Like I can't find it. Like I don't have it in there. I'm like, nope, not willing to.
You don't have to.
Yeah, you don't.
Know that. And that's great. Yeah, for sure.
Isn't that freeing?
Yeah, 100%.
Like, I don't have to participate in this toxic behavior.
Well, and sometimes taking care of us is doing that.
Sure. Yeah.
I think what was
makes me sad.
I think what I had to realize was when I was writing on these resentments, especially for my mom, all of her part was in the past, and all of my part was in the present. And so the resentment was really only existing because I continued to hold on to who she was and not who she is. Like once I started realizing who she had become, like the work that she had done, and she was very patient with me. Like she did all of her work and she just waited for me to catch up.
Yeah.
And so that's where the healing started, was when I realized like, okay, like, yes, my resentment is valid, but the reason I'm still in pain over it is strictly myself. Yeah. There's people that if your family has a part today,
they don't have the option for that.
Yeah. Exactly, so that's the difference. You're
lucky.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, did your mom ever make amends?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And then did you make amends to your mom?
I did.
So that's all cleaned up. That's how, do you believe that's why you have such a close relationship? Because you squashed it all?
Yeah, I think our relationship today is really a reflection of my program, because she was always there, waiting. And like I said, I caught up. And once I recognized, and then I was able to make an amends, it was super powerful. And I'll tell you what, I didn't make the formal amends till I had years clean.
Yeah.
Because like I had convinced myself I'm just doing a living amends, blah, blah, blah. But actually sitting her down and acknowledging it.
Yeah.
We cried and we had this moment of like real, true vulnerability. And ever since then, there's been.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
Yeah. I feel really lucky because I have 4 parents and I have a different relationship with all of them, but it's authentic with all of them.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's one resentment. Were there other big ones?
For sure, yeah. So I'll tell you what, I've done multiple 4 steps.
Yeah.
And by the time I got to my feeling steps, I was like,
what's that?
I worked the feeling steps. It's like a.
So I've never heard of that until I moved up here, and I don't think the rest of the world has ever heard of it.
It's derived from the step work, the basic text, and the step working guide, but it really focuses on, like, sometimes we focus on spiritual principles, sometimes we focus on a character defect. This really focuses on feelings. Uh-huh. And so, we're powerless over our feelings. My thinking is unmanageable. And like, we differentiate the difference between what we think and what we feel.
Are you still part of that sponsorship family that does the feelings?
Yeah. And so, but it wasn't until I really got in touch with my feelings. And this is when my authenticity journey really started, right around 5 years clean.
Yeah.
And I really got to the bottom of like what I was feeling and what my head told me about those feelings, and then how I acted out on those feelings.
Before you go on, can I ask you?
Yeah.
Is it like some papers with questions on them?
No. I wrote it out, but yeah, it's so the first 3 steps is very much journaling and processing. There's not questions to be answered until you get to like 4.
So I'm just curious, like,
where's the format?
Yeah. Is it something that we can have and download and print?
No.
Oh.
Well, I will say, so the feeling steps is really interesting because the way I was sponsored through them, which my sponsor is based on how she was sponsored, is you get like 1 piece at a time. And so that really because I don't know about you, but like when I do 69 questions in step 1 out of the step working guide, I know, okay, I'm on question 20. That means I got 49 left.
Yeah.
With the feeling steps, you do 1 part at a time until you're done with that part. And then you find out what the next part is. And so they don't have you download like a list of questions, because the point is to do the part you're on and not to think about what comes next. So while there is like a format, it's not something that's just like
printed,
given to you up front. It's very much a process and less an assignment, if that makes sense.
That's interesting.
But anyway, so it wasn't until I worked my 4th step through the feeling steps that I really got to, I forgot where my train of thought was going.
The resentment?
Oh, yeah. So that's when I really realized that, 1, I hadn't made these direct amends yet, that all these resentments, I had I think 82 resentments on my feeling steps.
That's a lot.
Which were all resentments I thought I had worked out, but it wasn't until I really took a look at like, how am I still acting in my life and where does that come from? Like all this inauthenticity, all this feeling of inadequacy, all this perfectionism, and like I have issues with fear and anger and impatience and these expectations I put on others. Where does that come from? And when I really started to look at it, all these resentments were still there, waiting in the background.
Wow.
And I had done step work around them, but I had never resolved the feelings. Huh. And so they came back up, which of course, what do we say? Like if it comes up on your 4-step, write it down.
Yeah.
And so it was very, it was hard to ignore when I got to that set of steps that I still carry it.
Do you still?
No.
So like there
are people on I just did a 5th step again,
so
and there were
resentments
people,
there.
But I'll tell you what, there's 4 people on my 4-step.
Yeah. You know what? I got 2.
Are they new?
Yes.
That's cool.
So
you cleaned up a lot of stuff in the past.
Oh yeah. And how freeing it is when and I didn't realize how much I can kid myself into thinking, oh, I'm over that. But sometimes I'm over that just means I'm not looking at that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I could count 2 people that I still have resentments, and I want those resentments to go away. I'm not like clinging on to them. It's just stuff gets kicked up every once in a while. I go, God, man,
I think the beauty.
I think it'll keep getting kicked. I mean, that's why we get to do them over and over and over again. The resentment
could be. Well, I know there's a point where we can just acknowledge that these things happen and then detach ourselves from them.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's what I was going to say. It's not that I don't experience like pain or people mistreating me or anything like that in life, but
let it go.
When I realize that has nothing to do with me, I don't form a resentment around it.
Yeah.
It's really, I'll tell you what, the people on my resentments list are the people I have expectations around. And the resentment is strictly around the expectation being unmet.
Myself.
If I have an unmet, myself is always on there. When I have an unmet expectation, guaranteed a resentment is short to follow. Like, it's right there.
8 and 9 this last round was just me.
Yeah, that's wonderful though.
Just me, yeah. And it was the hardest 8th and 9th step that I've done too.
Yeah.
It was the most tedious and I sat on it. I sat on it because I don't want to fucking look at it because I know if I look at it, then I have to do something different.
Yeah.
And then I was overwhelmed and didn't want to change anything.
Right.
So it was just I just fucking sat.
Yeah, I think when I was in Josh's space, resenting myself years ago when I was doing that process, that's when I was taught about like the 12-step and my own perception of humility. Is because I had I resented myself, and then when I was taught humility is like, I accept myself with all these character defects, you know, and my assets and character defects. It's just who I am.
Yeah.
And it's a continuous process. We talk about that.
Yeah.
Like, this is a continuous process. I feel the 2-foot drop, right? I feel I'm a pretty good guy. Like I'm a nice guy.
Yeah.
And I'm not a bad guy.
Yeah.
And so to acknowledge that and stay in your heart.
Yeah, I think as my list gets smaller, the attachment I have those to that smaller list is bigger because I can't spread it across 120 people anymore. I got to put it all into these 4 people.
Yeah, that's a lot of hate.
And so like sometimes the condensed version is more painful because it's like, man, I'm focusing all my energy on these 4 resentments. And
that's accurate.
Yeah, it is.
And so, and when I become the common denominator, then it's like, I got to try really hard not to beat myself up over that.
Dude, so you know what's funny about that real quick?
Yeah.
Is I was told, those 2 resentments that you have, they're living rent-free in your head. Rent-free. You're a terrible landlord. What are you going to do about it? I'm going to evict them.
I love that.
I'm going to evict those 2. And so that's what I'm working on.
It's not worth the energy.
You've given them the 30-day notice.
Yeah.
They're packing up.
Yeah.
That's the analogy I use is it's not the analogy, the phrase I use for myself, like the energy that I'm using to hold on to this is not like it can be put somewhere else.
Right. That makes you happy.
Yeah. Or it can go nowhere and I just have it. Like the energy that I'm spending here is hurting nobody but myself.
Yeah.
I like that. Like being the only person on my resentment list was beneficial this last round once I finally got through it, and still is because what I've taken from it is how to kindly find ways to treat myself better.
Mm-hmm. Like self-worth and self-esteem.
Yeah, politely, doing it politely with like some fucking compassion for myself. Like
be gentle.
Instead of beating myself up about being too overwhelmed or not, or stressed out, or like not getting enough done or this or that. It's like all of those things that I just described are normal. Like they're normal. It's what I put on it and how I deal with it that's creating the problem for me. And so like being able to understand that like I'm not going to get as much done as maybe I think I should because my expectations are fucking unrealistic sometimes. And like, if this doesn't work out, it's going to be okay. And like finding ways to create more space for myself to just exist kindly.
That sounds exactly what Ryan was talking about in the beginning. Is she's gracefully in the eye of the storm with all this chaos going on, and and
it ties into humility too. Is like just knowing that there's things that I just cannot control.
Yeah,
I mean, if I don't allow other people to talk down to me anymore, but I'm quick to talk down to myself.
Yeah,
and so it's really a lesson in like hearing the critic, and just observing it and being like, wow, thanks for sharing. Like, I don't buy into that today.
That's in your head.
Yeah.
In your heart, how do you feel about yourself?
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and like in my heart, I'm at peace. That doesn't mean that like change, because I can also use peace or serenity as a way to be complacent. So it's like, it's just always a balance of what do I want and how do I achieve it? And like Josh said, kindly.
Yeah. Be gentle with yourself. So here's the next question. Tell us about a reservation you had when you first got clean.
If anything happened to my kid.
So
when I got clean, I like gave myself permission to get loaded if anything happened to my kid.
Was that the only reservation?
Yep. I really like reservations scared me because I got loaded over everything, good and bad. And I thought, okay, I really need to figure out like, what am I giving myself permission to get loaded over? And honestly, I mean, in the beginning, sure. Like I was like, well, if Narcotics Anonymous doesn't change my life in a year, then it gets to refund my misery, blah, blah, blah. But like the truth is my one reservation was if anything happens to my kid, I'm getting loaded.
How long did that last?
So when I had 4 years clean, a woman in recovery's son suffered an incredible accident that put him into traumatic brain injury. He was in a coma for months and months. And she went to the hospital. She did what she was supposed to do. She continued to go to meetings and work steps, and she didn't get loaded. And my reservation did not end until I was at that little boy's funeral. And Narcotics Anonymous was there with her. She had not gotten loaded. Oh, I'm going to get emotional.
Wow.
But like seeing someone go through that trauma and not get loaded was...
Yeah.
Like, that's when I was like, okay, it's no longer a reservation because I know now it's a choice.
Yeah.
Because I thought if anything happened to my kid, I got to get loaded and no one could, like, there's no getting through that without getting loaded.
Now you have proof.
And now I had proof, like, in front of me. And so I couldn't ignore that anymore. And so that's when it stopped being a reservation.
That was the only one?
Mm-hmm.
Kevin, do you have reservations?
Have. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I had a similar situation, except it was my daughter. And so what was that? Less than 5 years? No, she was like, I think she was 8, and she ended up in the hospital. She had asthma, but she had it so bad that she was in a tent with breathing tubes and all kinds of crazy stuff. And I hadn't processed a lot of stuff, and I had quite a few years clean. And I had never processed my childhood trauma.
Mm-hmm.
I had never processed and done any work on all that stuff. It took me a long time to get through a lot of work. Anyways, I knew when I saw her that I was facing powerlessness, and I didn't know how to direct that. I didn't know how to accept that. And so I was pretty squirrely at that time. And I was like, man, if something happens to her, I'm not sure I want to be around, to be honest with you. So that was pretty impactful. But she's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you?
I mean, once I actually once I was able to logically and spiritually at the same time see the possibility of the program working, like when that hit together for me, I didn't have any. Like I still don't. Before I committed to the program, I was like, nah, I'll still drink or I'll smoke. Maybe I can smoke weed. Like I wasn't sure about so I floated around for a year. And relapse is part of my story, and I've never seen them coming. Like I've never been like, there's never been anything where I'm like, if this happens, I'm going to get loaded, or I don't think I can deal with that. Like, I know that drugs aren't going to make anything better, and I don't want to live that way.
You only saw it, after the fact. You looking back, going, "Oh, this is what led up to this."
Sure, yeah, and it wasn't anything,
but not a reservation,
right? It wasn't. There's nothing that I'm like. I know that I can get through whatever without getting loaded, but along the way, somewhere along the way, a couple times I've been like, I've lost sight of,
just not paying attention.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bad decisions.
Take that back. I didn't have a getting loaded reservation. Now that you made me think of that, is right at the time I was getting clean, I had a 6-year prison sentence that was suspended. Mm-hmm. And if I got, dirty test again, I would get sent to prison. I knew for a fact that if I got rolled up and sent to prison, I was going to commit suicide. Mm-hmm. That was a reservation. I wasn't going to get loaded because that's what got me there, but I didn't want to live after that.
Yeah.
And so that was a pretty heavy reservation. So thank God that didn't happen. So what does that reservation look like now? I mean, Abby, anything happens to Abby, you're good? Or not good.
Obviously that would be the greatest tragedy of my life.
Yeah.
But I know today, if I get loaded, it's I'm not going to like trip and fall back into my disease, that I can still use the tools of the program. I saw, like I said, I saw what Kim went through, and I know that Narcotics Anonymous will show up. Like if I just reach out my hand, I don't have to do it alone. Sometimes
you don't even have to reach out.
Yeah. So like I've been through death now in recovery. I've been through tragedy and loss, and I know how the program shows up, and I don't like, now it's not a reservation anymore. It would be obviously so painful, right? And pain is scary. Especially if you don't know when it's going to end. But yeah, I mean, I continue to do the program I know works for me. That way, if tragedy hits, or because it's inevitable, then I know what to do.
Yeah, that's interesting you say that. So Josh and I went to a funeral a few weeks back, last week, but my sponsor passed away.
Yeah.
Cancer, like a month ago now, but I never thought of getting loaded.
Right.
But I had every other feeling in the world.
Right.
But exactly what you said, I knew that there was going to be people there, and just a testament to the impact that people make in our lives. That, like, I would be doing such a disservice to how I felt about my sponsor if I got loaded. Mm-hmm. That I would probably carry that shame and guilt for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
I wouldn't. What a horrible thing to leave a memory of, right? To get loaded.
Oh, I have this fear too that if I get loaded, the guilt and shame will keep me from ever coming back.
Yeah.
Like people that walk back in, I have so much respect.
What strength it takes to come back.
Especially with like when you have time. Because walking in the beginning, we're new. I don't know anybody. Nobody has any expectations of me. I don't have to I don't have to face people that I already know. And so the idea of getting loaded and walking back in and raising my hand with less than 30 days, my fear, I'd like to think that in the end I'd do it. But right now, like I see people walk back in after giving up time, call in. It's like I have so much respect for that because fuck, that takes a whole different kind of strength than walking in your first time.
It's not fun.
Oh, I don't think it is. You guys definitely don't make it look fun.
Yeah.
You know? And I'm grateful. I'm grateful to people that come in back and say, yeah, I tried and it didn't work. It's still not good out there.
Yeah. Walk back in with arrows sticking out of their ass.
Yeah.
Jeez. I wouldn't. Yeah. I don't want that. It's interesting because I've watched people with time get loaded and come back, and it's not the same. They're not the same. Mm-hmm. They don't participate the same. Something has definitely changed for them, and I don't see like a drive to come back full force. And I think a lot of it has to do with that shame and guilt. And then some people come back and they're like all in.
I've experienced both of those phases. So the first relapse I had, I came back like fucking program or die. Like I came back like, I'm going to start meetings. I'm going to throw camping trips. I'm going to do this. And I did all of that. Like I, created a new fellowship. Like I did a bunch of shit, and what I realized, hindsight, and also through this last experience, is that did not allow me space to exist.
To like it didn't.
I didn't get
another way of hiding.
I buried my reality, and so like I didn't get a chance to respect my feelings. Like I did not create space for me to process it all. So this time has been very different, as in I've kind of staggered back into my my meeting attendance didn't change much from before the relapse to after, maybe even a little bit less meetings, and more paying attention to how I feel and not ignoring that, and like recognizing like, okay, hey, I'm a little bit squirrely. I need a meeting, instead of like 90 meetings in 90 days and all like this push that I put on myself and the pressure to like fix myself. And so it's completely opposite of my first experience, and the second one is totally different. It's so like I get like what you said, like some people come back and they're not full force, and some people just never get back on track too.
Yeah.
But like to people outside of me, they might see like my process coming back this time as it's not the same.
I see it as balanced.
That's what it feels like to me. It
authentic.
It feels safer. It feels more like, no, Josh is important in this, and I'm going to remember that this time. Like,
you don't have to be a mover and shaker.
Yeah, Josh fucking matters, and I need to listen to him.
I can use service as a way to change the way I feel.
Sure.
We've all done that.
So it's like sometimes being true to ourselves, even when ourselves looks like uncomfortable or ashamed, sometimes the shame is what we need to feel and move through to revamp like our commitment to ourselves. So I don't know. I'm a firm believer that everybody's process is different. It looks different. I'm not the person to judge it or tell you it's right or wrong. Because it takes what it takes.
Well, that's a great leeway into the next question.
I'm giving you guys so many good segues.
You're killing it.
I promise I didn't look at the cards first. I promise.
That's funny. Did you have shame and guilt growing up that led you to using drugs?
Yeah. I mean,
we talked about some of it, right?
I attached a lot of my mom leaving to like, why didn't she take us with us? Why, if he's so bad, why'd she leave us here? So the
interesting thing though is that you got loaded later.
Yeah. Well, but I also think that my disease showed up in different ways.
Yeah.
So, I mean, did I have that same loneliness, that emptiness, that desire to be loved and not know how to get it? And so I used people, places, and things to get that.
Sugar.
Sugar. Stealing was a big one. I would like steal your shit and help you look for it. And I was like 7.
7?
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
I used to like steal the TV remote.
Too.
Not for the batteries. But I used to steal the TV remote and hide it and just see like how long it took for people to notice. And then I would like help find it, because then don't you know, when I found it, I'm the hero. Yeah.
Would you take batteries out of things when they weren't being used?
No, never.
So
I'd always check batteries though to make sure that they weren't like corroded.
Okay, so it's safe to say that you had a battery fetish.
I guess
somewhere
this
along
is
the
all
line.
coming up right now.
Okay.
Do you get excited when you think about batteries right now?
No.
Good.
In fact, my junk drawer at home, I just have all the batteries thrown into one dish. That's progress.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
All right, we'll let that one go then.
Yeah.
So, shame and guilt.
So I think I attached a lot of why my mom left. There was a lot of shame and guilt around that. And I don't know. I was a overachiever in school. And so if I didn't perform at the highest level, I was instantly in shame. Not so much guilt, but shame for sure.
Yeah.
Like
upset with yourself that you didn't do the best.
For sure. Yeah. And I'd put all these expectations on myself again. Like no one hadn't, like my parents were so absent. There are no expectations on me other than myself. And so, but it's funny. I heard once that guilt says I did something bad. Shame says I am something bad.
Mm-hmm.
So shame resonates a lot more for me than guilt because I was always trying. I was always doing. But if I fell short, I immediately felt shame about that.
Did you experience or practice any codependency as a result of like abandonment or trust? Yeah. Was that young before drugs?
Oh yeah. So codependency has different patterns, right? So like mine really come out in control and self-esteem. I want to control the situation and the people around me through manipulation or people pleasing. Yeah. And my self-esteem is derived from what other people think. So that abandonment, I mean, even probably before that, although I can't like pinpoint it to any particular time, but really after my mom left and I sort of became the caretaker of the house was when my codependency kicked in. Like my need was proportional to my value. And so that's when my codependency really kicked in.
Yeah.
A lot of entitlement in my codependency too. Like I feel like I did this for you. And now I'm entitled to your time or attention or affection or love. You know,
if they didn't give it to you, did you feel
I'd hide the remote. Yeah. I'd get angry.
Steal the batteries.
Yeah. I would. Would I feel shame? Sure. But I mean, I think more anger, more anger and entitlement.
That's interesting. Yeah.
False entitlement? Like you would like.
Most entitlement is false. Yeah. I mean, I think there's certain like innate like rights, I guess, we're entitled to, but but no, most of my entitlement was always false.
It was based off of feeling a lack, and so you created some sort of entitlement to kind of counterbalance it in your head.
Yeah, well, my entitlement's all tied to expectation. All of my service, which is what I did for the household, was my service was all tied to this expectation that I was going to get something in return. So nothing was ever selfless. Nothing was ever out of kindness or love. It was all because I thought my needs were going to be met if I did this.
So let me ask you this. The service that you do today, like you and I do a lot of service in the program, that stuff's not attached to current service.
No.
Was it in the beginning when you first started doing service?
Well, yes. It was a lot of that.
Validation?
Oh, I'm going to be like the queen of NA. I'm going to be like the president. People are going to see me and know like that I know what's going on.
Yeah.
And so, there was a lot of selfish service done. There was a lot of my ego was tied up in it. I got put on a service restriction from my sponsor because I was definitely using service to gain like the notoriety or the value. It wasn't, and mostly at higher level. At group level is always like, I just want to give back. Like there was a lot of selflessness in group level. But once I started going to area, there was a lot of ego involved up there.
How's that guideline review going?
Oh, I haven't been the last 2 months because I've been taking care of myself.
Atta girl.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It just didn't work. I mean, they had it yesterday and it was Father's Day. And so I said, no, I won't be there. And the month before, it was on the day we got back from Yellowstone. I could have made it, but I would have been exhausted and I just decided not to.
Yeah.
Good choice.
Yeah, I balance service pretty well now. I've had to have a lot of help reminding me not to take on too much.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the
I sponsor a lot. And so that.
Motives change.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not about us. It's about us giving back.
Yeah. I'm back at area level right now. And I can say that I am doing selfless service up there. It's definitely not about my ego.
Policy advisor.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah.
Cool. Well, that's awesome. So here's a question about fears. What was one of your biggest fear in in early recovery?
Relapsing, the consequences of my behavior. I was facing a lot of prison time.
Yeah. What?
Well, I had 33 felony charges on my docket. And so I was looking at up to 5 years in prison. And it was my first offense. Or like I'd been arrested multiple times, but it was my first time going to court. So yeah, I was fearful of that. I was scared of being a mom. When I found out
going to be good enough.
Yeah. That I was going to abandon her like I was abandoned, right. Or that I wasn't going to be able to stay clean for her, or that just that I was going to carry in my own insecurities into how I parent.
That's a lot of feelings all at once. Good job getting through that.
Do you still feel that?
I mean, yeah, parenting's a trip. Almost probably 75% of my inadequacy issues are wrapped up in parenting.
No, but do you still feel that you might bring your childhood up?
No.
That's cool.
I definitely have not parented the way I was parented. Now, I will say some of my codependency showed up in parenting for sure. I wanted to be her friend. I didn't want to be like the bad guy.
Yeah.
I had to learn to balance boundaries in parenting, which is hard because ultimately I just want to be loved. Yeah. And I think, if I just give her this thing or do this thing that she wants and I don't hold my boundary, then she'll love me.
Yeah.
But
can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Have you, at some point, did you figure out that just being the friend can cause her more harm, right?
Yeah. So thank God for Narcotics Anonymous showing up and showing me how to parent. And like we talked about earlier, sometimes I see how I want to be and sometimes I see how I don't want to be.
Yeah.
And I actually got to I got to sponsor a woman and she parented the way that I parent now, which is with boundaries and consequences, but also with like a kind and loving, like not a demeaning or, tyrannical, however you want to call it. Yeah. And she really taught me a lot about how to parent with love and how to detach my value from how my kid is acting.
Yeah.
And how to set boundaries, but also remain flexible, like pick my battles.
Yeah.
And I also got to see women that were friends with their kids and they would come in and they would share about how that sort of eroded their relationship with them over time. Now their kids are older and adults and they don't have the relationship that they want with their kid because of it. And so I got to take what I wanted and leave the rest. And, it's still finding balance. I'm married to a very counter-dependent person. He's not codependent at all. And so sometimes I have to refer to him in parenting stuff, or I have to watch how he does it because he's detached with love. He detaches himself from her reaction.
Yeah.
And parents, but doesn't, he's not easy to sway. Do you know what I mean? I'm easy to sway. And so I've learned balance.
Mom, though,
yeah.
So
I've learned balance. I've learned to say no and mean it. I've had to learn to not yell at my kid. That was a big source of shame for me for a long time. It was on my 10th step for a long time. Did I yell at my kid today? Because I didn't know how to maintain boundaries. And so I would allow myself to build up this anger about constantly being giving up those boundaries and letting her cross them. And then I would blow up. And it was a huge source of shame for me.
So when you blow up, I learned that this is for me and my parenting with my kids, that that is the reaction, not the response. So the reaction's in my head. My son just disrespected me. I'm going to react to it. Or if I do the 2-foot drop and I'm in my heart, I will respond and say, "Hey, buddy, that's not okay.
Yeah.
That's not okay. You can't talk to me like that."
Yeah. And differentiating what my head's telling me, which is my kid's disrespecting me. She's never going to respect me. Oh my God, I'm going to grow up with this kid that never talks to me because she doesn't respect me. Yeah. So that's in my head. That's the committee in my head. I call him Kramer. And my reaction to that is my choice.
Does Kramer come barreling in through the door?
Oh, for sure. For sure. And causes a bunch of shit and then leaves.
Yeah, I can picture that.
Yeah. So yeah, it's been a a learning process, and my kid is 11 now. And so she's coming up on like a lot of changes, and I'm sure it's going to be
amazing
and chaotic. And I'm just going to try to sit in the eye of the storm.
Yeah. It's going to be beautiful.
Yeah. She's great. I mean, and not because she's perfect or always listens to me or any of that stuff, but man, she has just such a good heart.
Yeah. That's pretty cool that, and you know what's so cool that I love about the program is that we have everybody else to be there with us.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And yes, and you can look and take what you learn from other people and try new things.
The example, yeah.
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 Any other fears in recovery?
Like in early recovery?
There or now? Do you have any fears today?
I mean, today I fear a lot of like, most of my fears are of like who I'm becoming, if that makes sense. It's more of like, am I living the life I want to live? Am I like living in my purpose? Am I combating all those defects I have? Because I still find myself really attached to outcomes and putting expectations on people and on myself. And so most of my fear today is like, am I still like progressing? Am I still working my program? Am I still learning? Am I still doing things? Because like COVID got me into a place of complacency.
Yeah.
And while I did like the Zoom meeting thing and I continue to do that, I felt like a disconnect. And so coming back into recovery, like getting plugged back in, like that's all great. And I'm doing it. I just, my fear is that like, am I doing like, where are my motives at? I have like a lot of sponsees in a lot of different places in their recovery. And it's been really, for me, good to remember like everybody's process is their own, because I found myself getting attached again and wanting to control. And so that's really where my fear lies today, is that I'm going to go backwards, that I'm going to like fall back into old patterns.
Okay. Yeah. But my perception about you is that you still have kind of a very good grasp on humility.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I mean, it's hard to say that humbly, but yeah, I do.
Well, no, humbly would be just accepting yourself for who you are.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you're the great person. If you're humble, you're not saying, hey, I'm great. I just feel that you seem centered in your heart today.
Yeah. Yeah. It's tough because, like, I know I have fear, if that makes sense. Like, I know I'm afraid.
Totally, yeah.
I know I'm afraid of things, spiders for sure, but like, and clowns, but like the big
spiders
stuff,
and clowns,
the big stuff, it feels weird to say, but there's just fear doesn't really run my life anymore.
Yeah, it's perfect.
And I don't really know when that happened, but I know the longer I think about it, I can't really find it. It's
yeah.
So
you don't have to go looking for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good. Like, do you have any fears today?
Yeah.
All of them.
Yeah. I mean,
fear of failure.
I could relate with the, like, who am I becoming? Am I living in my purpose? Is this what I want my life to look like? Like, stuff kind of tied to that. Also, like, failure, not being able to, not only am I in my purpose, but am I capable of fulfilling my purpose if I am in my purpose? Like, the biggest fear I have is not fulfilling my purpose. Is like, if I whatever my higher power needs from me, if I'm unable to do that, like not being able to complete that, that's my biggest fear.
So that's kind of like a fear of failure.
Sure. Yeah. But I think beyond that, cause there's lots of stuff that Josh wants, and failing those things doesn't mess me up so much as the failure of not being able to, like, why am I still here? Like, I have that, like, the feeling of like the only reason I'm still here is because my higher power made the decision that I'm not supposed to be gone yet. And so to me, that indicates that there's a purpose for that.
Yeah, I get it.
And if I have a purpose, what is it? And I just want to make sure that I'm able to fulfill that, whatever that is. So that I have that fear. I struggle with, I think like all the other fears are kind of secondary. Like the main one is like the fear of failure, in that area that I was just describing. And then like, what the fuck am I doing with my life kind of question. And then there's lots of little things that stem from that. Like, if I get stuck in that fear, it kind of like
snowball.
It rolls out into other areas of my life that don't really deserve the energy that I place the fear on. Like I shouldn't be worrying about them. The other ones I shouldn't be worrying about either, but they hold a bigger space.
That you describing that just hurts my head. Like,
I know.
Holy shit.
I always think there's the trunk of the tree and then there's the branches. It's like defects and shortcomings. It's like the defects, the trunk, the shortcomings are the branches. Kind of the same thing. Like your core fear. Like I'm always going to fear I'm not good enough.
Yeah.
But the work I do helps to remind me that
you don't need to act on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and just to touch on something you said about like our higher power's purpose and am I going to be able, like I fully believe that if my higher power gives me a purpose, it's because I'm capable of it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but the thing is my belief around that is that we have a choice.
Yeah.
We have the ability to show up for that.
Yeah, for sure.
And like I want to make sure that I show up.
I've learned that there's a trap there. There's a trap there.
Break that down for me. I'd love to hear about it.
Yeah. We can convince ourselves that that's the higher power's purpose for us. And if we don't fulfill that, then we failed. The trap that I have learned in my life is that once I get there, and if I truly believe that that's what I was supposed to do and I fail, that I'm a horrible person, when the fact was, and this is after doing some work around that, the fact was that I was there to learn the lesson.
Yep.
Sure.
Yeah.
Learn the lesson, whether it worked out or not. What I learned is that I can go through that.
That's hindsight.
No.
Yeah.
Well, I think
hindsight is wisdom, right? And so then from then on, I was able to pay attention.
I think too, though, there's like a moment for me where I became willing to accept that everything happens for a reason. And if so, there is no failure, because even when I fail, quote unquote, the lesson is in the failing.
Yeah.
Because I failed plenty of times in my life, and my belief is that my higher power's been there the entire time. And so all those lessons have taught me something. They've brought me to who I am right now. So like if I go forward knowing that let's say I want to like learn to like do a front flip on a trampoline, that's what I want to do. Like no matter what happens, whether I learn it or not, like the purpose is in doing it. And whether I learn it or not, it's irrelevant.
Yeah. No, pay attention.
Yeah.
So I've got a coffee cup in there, but my first sponsor would say, or I think he repeated it from somebody else, that every experience that we go through, it's our responsibility to share that experience, whether we fail or not, because we're learning something. And for one example, it was in early recovery, when I first got clean, my son was like 6 months old, and his mom wouldn't let me see him. And for my first year, I was fighting that battle to be able to visit my son. And so I had to go to court, but I couldn't pay for a lawyer. And so I sold everything I owned, all my tools and everything. And I paid for a lawyer, got mediation, went to court, and I got all the visitation I wanted. Right. So the lesson I learned is that those things that I had, those material things that I had, a couple of years later, I was able to afford to buy them all back. So it's not the process that I had all that stuff, because it's stuff.
Yeah. It
was the lesson I learned that I can get all that back, is if I'm willing to sacrifice what I have to get to what I want or what I need. I needed to have my son in my life.
Well, it's the same thing too with like the expungement that I went through is like, just do it. Just try. Because even if I fail, then I'll know that the judge is going to tell me what I assumed he was going to tell me. So the worst case scenario is that what's happening is in my head is going to come true, but that's almost never the case.
Yeah.
It was the same when I like was going to donate my kidney is I was like, oh, I'm never going to qualify, blah, 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 blah. And my sponsor said the same thing. Just apply, like just go through the motions. And no matter what, like that experience is going to be a part of your story and you might help somebody else with it.
Yep.
I mean, what Kim went through with her son is tragic, but like, look at the lives she touched just in showing up and getting through it.
Yeah.
You
It
know?
helped you.
I just had a huge, well, not huge, but pretty big realization as we're sitting here that I'm going to need to process more. But I have this belief that like I'm supposed to do something huge, there's this thing that my life is building to, and I just realized that like, and I've always had that my whole life, but I need to look at that because I have a fear that I'm never going to get to that point. And then if I don't do things a certain way, that I'll never get there. Like there's this thing I'm supposed to get to, but I have to do all these things right, like a fucking video game to get to the final boss.
Sounds like you're setting yourself up.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure what the realization was is that's, although I may have had it my whole life and it feels like it's attached to my higher power, it's possible that I may have created that attachment and that it's really just, so much of my life would be so much easier if I didn't feel like I had to accomplish this fucking monumentous fucking peak achievement.
Yeah.
Up here.
I
And I don't
agree
even know
with
what the
you,
fuck
Josh.
it looks like.
Over the years that we've been working together, I totally agree with you. You don't need to do that.
Well, and
I'm on board.
We were at a meeting and somebody the other day, and it just resonated with me, is that there's like this paralysis through over analysis. And it's like,
I've heard that.
Yeah. Phil said it at the meeting.
Yeah.
It's like you think yourself out of action. And I'm so like that because I have this desire to quote unquote do it right. I have to do it in the right order. It has to look a certain way. It has to feel a certain way. And like the expectation that we put on the process stops us from ever getting to it.
Yeah. All right. Here's the fun part. This is everybody's favorite.
It's all been fun.
No, this is everybody's favorite part. What assets do you have that helps you be of service to others? Let's talk about assets.
Oh, okay.
You love assets, huh?
I do love assets. I'm great at them.
So avoidance is not an asset.
Oh, okay. I don't know. I think I have a lot of assets. You want me to name my own?
Hey.
Oh, okay.
That's why we're here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm funny. So I'm funny. I'm open-minded.
Yeah.
I'm
funny. You like your sense of humor?
I do.
Me too.
I think I'm hilarious.
Yeah.
And I really honestly don't care if anybody else does. But I do make a lot of people laugh, so I have to think there's something there.
I agree with you.
I don't know. I'm kind-hearted. You know, I'm a good mom.
Yeah.
I'm a really good sponsor. Like, it took me a long time to be able to say that one.
Yeah.
But
why?
the truth just because, you know,
self-conscious,
compare myself to women with more time.
Oh, so you're comparing.
Yes, for sure. Oh, comparing is a huge thing for me. But I'm a good sponsor. I'm a good listener. I also have a really good way of explaining the thoughts in my head. I've been told that multiple times, that I have a way of explaining things that like galvanize, like gets people excited to do things. So I'm a good motivator. And yeah, I mean, I'm awesome. I'm kind, I'm loving, I'm very like generous of spirit, generous of my heart.
You are?
Yeah. I give a lot. And truthfully, a lot of it is I want to. It's no longer transactional. It's really because I just feel this immense amount of love and I just want to pour that out into the universe, you know, instead of hoarding it for myself.
Most people like balk when we ask them about assets because they, you know, it's hard for us to talk about our own assets without that little tinge of like, you know, ego or false pride or like, but you seem like I didn't mean to say seem, but I know that you are pretty grounded in humility. And so it's okay to be in that space.
Yeah. I think the process of getting to know myself, right, that journey of authenticity really allowed me to embrace the things I like about myself.
Yeah.
And be okay saying it out loud. I think there's this, sort of energy or mentality that if we think highly of ourselves, it must not be true. But the truth is we're all resourceful.
Or we're acting on ego.
Yeah. And I think we're like generally people are good, kind, generous. I mean, we have assets that, and there's ones that people have that I don't have. And it's like, I want to be around that. You attract these people for a reason. And then we want to kind of deny that they're there. And it's just, I used to have to ask people, tell me what my assets are. And then people would tell me and I would feel embarrassed by it. And I don't feel embarrassed today
when people
about my
give
assets,
you a compliment,
or when people give me a compliment.
Yeah.
Like somebody said the other day, I'm a great listener. And 5 years ago, I would have been like, oh, but I'm an even better talker type of, I would have like negated their compliment with a negative thing.
But today you just say thank you.
Yeah. Or I say, you're right. I am. Because I am.
That's a sense of humor too that I like about you.
But I do. I work really hard to really bolster my assets, like listen and things that I know are valuable to the people around me. So like being generous, being kind, saying, I will say one asset I have today is that like I'm a seeker. So like I'm always trying to learn. I'm always trying to like better myself. I'm always trying to learn new things. I think it goes along with open-minded, but like that's something I feel I bring into my friendships or my relationships is I'm always that like seeker. I'm always like trying to learn. I'm listening. I'm engaged in what you're telling me because I care.
Yeah.
And I think that builds intimacy between people.
No, I believe that. I'm like over the last, I would have to say 10 years for me, has been a constant practice of humility, like, I have some of these character defects. I understand that, and I'm working on them. But the assets part, like, that's where I learned to say out loud, I really believe I'm a nice guy.
Yeah.
And when I do drop into my heart, I'm feeling that.
Yeah.
It comes true. And so that's one of the things that I really appreciate about you is that I can see that process.
Yeah.
You.
And you are a nice guy.
That's what I want to be.
I think I'm a nice person too.
Yes.
And I think like I'm a really good friend.
Do you remember Cheers?
Yeah.
Remember watching Cheers?
Yeah.
You know when Norm walks in the door?
Norm.
That's what I wanted. When I walk into an NA room, and I don't want it for like accolades or anything. I want people to go, hey, I really like that guy.
I know. Because when you're not there, I miss you.
Oh, I miss you too. No, but I like when I first walked, I've been told when I first walked in the room, my dear friend Irene said that I scared her, all those years ago because I had that armor and that mask and all that stuff to keep you away. And it was dangerous for you to try and talk to me.
Yes, it's funny too that because people used to tell me I would intimidate them too, which I always found so interesting because and the reason they said I intimidated them was because I was like working this program and I seemed like the perfections, right? Because that was my image management is I would only present what I felt looked good.
Gotcha.
That's what my sponsor calls it, the look good. And today I just show it all. Like if somebody says in a meeting, how are you doing? And I'm not doing good, I'll say, I'm not doing that great.
Yeah.
Like that level of honesty is really important to me today because it allows people to know me.
Well, it creates the example. Being like doing enough work to know the value in being authentic also enables other people to see it. And when other people see it, it gives them the idea that they can do it too, which creates community, which is huge.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think showing up too as in the process. I think it's like important for people to know I didn't just get here. I had to work to get here. New people walking in or people who don't know me. It's like important for me for them to know like I wasn't always like this, even in recovery.
Yeah.
It took me a long time to be brave. My friend Dan says that all the time that it's the bravest thing I can do is sign up for conflict. The bravest thing I can do is like show up authentically because some people just I won't be their cup of tea. And while I don't understand how anyone would not like this cup of tea, it happens. I'm just not everybody's cup of tea, and that's okay.
A lot of times, and this is what I found in my life, is a lot of times those people that don't appreciate your cup of tea is somebody that fears, that you might be authentic around them and they'll be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because they're not.
And I'd rather be disliked for my true self than liked and no one knows me.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, that level of honesty now is what I think builds such meaningful relationships in my life, because people can trust me.
Yeah.
That's what it was like such an eye-opening moment for me when I went to my sponsor, 5 years clean, and I was like, I have all these relationships and none of them matter. None of them mean anything because we don't have this intimacy that I want. And she goes, well, are you honest in your relationships? And it took a long time for me to realize that image management is just another level of dishonesty.
Yeah.
And so working through that and being honest at that level now is not my default setting, but there's so many rewards that come with it.
Do you find it's easy to do it outside of the rooms too?
No.
Out in public?
No, it's harder.
Really?
Oh yeah. Around normal people, I have like a lot of like that comparison.
Yeah.
Like especially with moms and stuff. It's really difficult because I don't communicate with normal people the same way I communicate with people in recovery because they just don't have the same language.
No, that's what I've been saying that for a while now, is that I am so comfortable in the rooms because I can be authentic.
Yeah.
But to be around civilians that are used to talking superficially, the weather, all that stuff, and that drives the start of the conversation. When I'm like, hey, my sponsor just passed away and I feel like crap and I'm really, really hurting. You know how uncomfortable that makes people?
Yeah.
Unless it's you and I.
Yeah. Well, I think too, I had to realize that like I can show up as myself no matter what, but I've stopped expecting out in the world that other people are going to understand how to deal with that. So like I was at a situation with, a bunch of parents from school, and somebody asked me how I was doing and I was like, not good. And they were like, well, okay.
You're not supposed to say that.
And then they were like, did something happen? I'm like, no, I'm just not like having a great day. And it was like, they didn't comprehend, and it's like, that's just because we just get so used to saying, yeah, great, good, like hiding what we're really going through.
Yeah.
And then not knowing how to deal with that authenticity when it shows up.
Right.
So
I have experienced, like normies or civilians or whatever that aren't used to authentic people all the time, that every once in a while you find somebody that just gets so taken aback by it that they just let loose too.
Yeah.
Like the dam breaks and they're like, oh man, and it's a beautiful thing for me to watch is to get somebody else that's not used to people in the program come out and start talking about their feelings.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
It's pretty, okay. So here's the question. How are you showing your gratitude for your recovery today? Why are you laughing?
I mean, my gratitude speaks when I care and when I share the NA. I mean, I'm here. Anytime Narcotics Anonymous asks me to show up and I do. Yeah. But, I think I show gratitude for my program anytime I'm authentic, anytime I eat a balanced meal, anytime I, take care of myself. I think when I sit back and think about like what Narcotics Anonymous really is for me is, it's how I like love myself, how I take care of myself. Yeah. And so my gratitude is shown in lots of ways. Every time I like go to a meeting or I say yes to service, sometimes when I say no to service, like if I can't, like me not going to the guideline review meeting yesterday because it was Father's Day, like that's my recovery in action.
You're showing gratitude for,
and I'm always grateful.
Your husband.
Yeah. I'm always in gratitude. Like if I'm taking care of myself, putting the mask on me and then worrying about putting the mask on the person next to me.
Yeah. I like one of the main things that I see gratitude for is working with sponsees. Like, that's how I show my gratitude is like, to be able to be of service to them.
Yeah.
You know?
Sponsorship is I've done service at all the levels I can think of, almost all the levels, not all of them, but a lot. And sponsorship is my favorite.
It is.
It's just, there's nothing like that relationship.
There isn't. I believe that.
And I'm like really lucky. I sponsor really amazing women, and they just, keep me on track sometimes. They remind me that like I have an assignment to do, or I don't know. Sponsorship's the best. There's nothing like it.
What about you? Right. Current gratitude. Give us one example.
I don't find it I don't find it. It finds me lately.
I like that.
And, which is new for me. I've learned and found, or, I will be in the middle of experiencing gratitude without looking for it, and have the realization that I'm in it, and get a little bit, feel it more than I ever have before. And I don't know, like, in the sense of like action, like how do I show my gratitude?
Yeah.
Is like, not giving up, like continuing to do the work, to try and grow, to try and be better.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I can grasp that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. It doesn't have to be a specific thing. Like you just said, it's in your actions, right? That's pretty cool. Yeah. I like that. So, here's a part of we're just about done here, but here's a part where we always ask, give us one crazy story of when you were getting loaded, like that you're able to talk about. Like, what's the craziest shit that you did?
I didn't get loaded that long. Like the amount of time that I was getting loaded was.
Mine was super short too, but I had some stuff.
Not that I'm discounting that I definitely earned my seat. But a lot of stuff happened really fast for me.
Crazy for you doesn't look like crazy for everybody else.
Our house getting raided was crazy, but like as far as what I did, let's see. I don't know. I think about like how I used to like steal stuff.
Yeah.
Now, and I'm like, man, that was insane to me. I would literally I wouldn't even look around first. I would just take stuff, put it in my purse and walk out. And today to me, that just seems so crazy. I put myself in like a lot of like dangerous situations, just hoping to get loaded. But I think one of the craziest things that ever happened was I got arrested, and we didn't realize that we had been getting followed for so long. They would like stake us out, and like they'd let us do our thing, and then they'd follow us to the next place, and they'd let us do our thing, and they like didn't arrest us on scene.
They were building a case on you.
Yeah, and so I remember, and we had no idea, right? Because we just thought we were that good at criminals. And I just remember when we finally got arrested, and they pulled us out of the car, and they're searching, and they're doing all this stuff. I just remember the cops like high-fiving. They like all showed up, and they're all high-fiving each other. They're like, we got them. And I remember thinking, I was like, how big of a deal are we right now? Because I thought we were under the radar, right? Yeah. I thought we were like floating. They're pulling my wigs out of the we had stuff like hidden all over the car, and they're pulling the panels apart. And I just remember that feeling of like, oh, maybe I'm like a big deal, like thinking there was like some clout in that. So that's I like to tell that story because I just like, I don't know why, especially in the beginning, I thought that was like such a big deal that like the cops were so happy to like get us off the streets.
You were notorious.
Yeah, I was a big deal.
Yeah, you were the blue wig bandit.
I remember another crazy thing I did was I rode to Reno on the back of a Harley with like just a tank top on in the middle of winter. I've never been so cold.
That's smart.
Yeah.
Huh.
I don't know though. What do people usually say? Oh, they like lit stuff on fire, or what's like crazy?
Yeah.
It's relative.
It is. Well, and especially now to me, like crazy to me is like a lot. I remember I didn't leave Thunder Valley for like 42 hours straight.
Just because you were in plain.
Yeah. I was just walking around. Like I had my dealer meet me there. So it's like, I just was like, I lived there.
So you didn't gamble? You just walked around?
Oh no, I gambled.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. So Thunder Valley will actually like print you out a report of how much you spent in the casino. No, I had no car. I had nowhere to live, and I lived on like just my using, could barely afford to eat. And somehow I gave Thunder Valley $88,000 in 1 year. Because I would win it and then I would just give it back. And then I'd win it and I would give it back.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And that's pretty. $88,000.
Yeah. $88,000 in 1 year. Yeah.
Most people don't even
make that
much money.
By the way, I didn't have a job. None of that money was mine.
So it was all hustle?
It was all hustle and like the winning and giving it back. I do not gamble. I do not gamble now. No, I do not gamble today. No.
All right. Well, cool. Hey, so we appreciate you. And I just, Josh and I wanted to throw out a shout and appreciation to a couple of listeners. We've had some people donate money recently, and we have one subscriber now. We have our first subscriber.
Oh, nice.
So like Alexandria hit us up for a really good gave a really good donation. We just shout out to her. And Rhonda, we want to acknowledge you. Very cool, very awesome, very first subscriber. You should be proud of yourself. And then Dave M, that's my sponsor, Steve's brother. That whole family gave us a pretty good shout out at the service and on the pamphlets. They have a QR code to Steve's podcast. So
yeah, that was a trip. That was an overwhelming feeling that was.
Yeah, unexpected. I didn't know that was going to happen.
It was cool. We were able to get that episode done.
Yeah.
Oh, did they play an episode at the service?
They didn't play it. They had it on the pamphlet they handed out at the service. They had a QR code with the link to it. Yeah, and then at the reception after the service, the entire family came and met Josh and I, and we're so grateful. And that was one of the times where I couldn't do small talk. I was completely authentic, and I started breaking down and tearing up when I was talking to them. And anyways, we just want to give a shout out to those listeners. So,
that's awesome.
Appreciate you, Ryan.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you very much for coming out.
Hopefully I have a radio voice.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. You're on it now.
I have a radio voice now.
Yeah.
You'll find out in like a week and a half.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm not listening to this.
Yeah. Oh, you'll have to. Yeah, you'll have to.
Did you ever listen to your speaker tapes back?
Maybe once every 10 years.
I can't do it. It's too weird.
Yeah. I only do it to look back. All right. We love you.
Love you too.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. Night.
Thank you for listening, and we hope you enjoyed the episode. Often you will hear addicts referring to a specific 12-step program or rehab. These are personal stories. We do not represent any of the programs.